Hey, if you're thinking about moving to Richmond Village in Ottawa, there are a few things that you should know before buying a home here. Richmond is one of the most charming communities in Ottawa, but it's also not the right fit for everyone. Some people move here and they absolutely love the lifestyle. Others realize pretty quickly that it's not exactly what they expected. And there's actually one thing about living in Richmond Village that surprises a lot of people after they move here, but I'll explain that a little later on. So in this video, I'm going to break down the real pros and cons of living in Richmond Village so that you can decide if it's the right place for you. If this is your first time on the channel, my name is Dwayne Desveaux. I'm an Ottawa real estate agent here in Ottawa, Ontario. And on this channel, I help people understand what it's like to live in different communities around Ottawa so that they can make a better decision before they purchase a home. And by the way, if you're thinking about buying, selling, investing, or relocating to Ottawa, I have people just like you reaching out every single week to help them with their next move. I'd love to have a private conversation with you to see how I can help you make the right decisions, avoid any mistakes, and guide you through the process. If you'd like to have a conversation, you can click the link in the description or contact me using the information on the screen. Now let's talk about what it's really like living in Richmond. Pro number one, the small town feel. One of the biggest reasons people love living in Richmond Village is the small town atmosphere. Even though Richmond is part of the city of Ottawa, it still feels very much like its own village. You have a historic main street, local restaurants, small businesses, and community events throughout the year. It's the kind of place where neighbors know each other, kids safely ride their bikes around the neighborhood, and life moves at a slightly slower pace. For buyers who want a quieter lifestyle and still want to be within driving distance of the city, Richmond Village really hits the sweet spot. Okay, let's talk about pro number two. Larger lots in a variety of homes. So another big advantage of Richmond is the type of homes you can find here. Unlike newer suburbs where everything is built around the same time, Richmond has a lot of variety. You'll see older century homes, custom built homes, detached homes with larger yards, and even newer subdivisions. Many properties here sit on larger lots, which is a big draw for buyers who want outdoor space, privacy, and room for things like pools and gardens. For a lot of buyers, that extra breathing room is one of the biggest reasons that people choose Richmond. Now let's talk about pro number three, newer communities being built in Richmond. Another interesting thing about Richmond right now is that it's actually growing pretty substantially. Over the last couple of years, a number of newer subdivisions have been developed in the area. One of the most well-known is the Fox Run community built by Kaivan Communities. These homes tend to attract buyers who love the village lifestyle, but still want a newer home with modern layouts, open concepts, and of course, updated finishes. So Richmond now offers a mix of both worlds. You have the established homes with character and that have been here for decades. And you also have the newer communities like Fox Run that feel a little bit more like a modern neighborhood. For many buyers, that combination is actually a huge advantage. Now, one more pro, number four, it's great for families. Richmond is also a very family-oriented community. There are parks, schools, sports programs, and a strong sense of community involvement. A lot of families move here specifically because they want a quieter environment to raise their families. It's not unusual to see the families walking in neighborhoods, kids riding their bikes, or people just gathering around for local events. For buyers looking for that type of lifestyle, Richmond checks all the boxes. Okay, now let's talk about some of the downsides. One of the biggest considerations is, of course, the distance from downtown Ottawa. Richmond sits roughly 30 to 35 minutes from downtown, depending on the traffic. So, if you work in the city core every day, that commute can feel a little bit longer compared to living in the other suburbs, such as Canada and Barrhaven. Many residents rely heavily on driving since public transit options are more limited compared to areas closer to the city, although they're working on that. For some people, that's a big issue, but it's definitely something buyers should think about. Con number two would be limited amenities. Another thing to keep in mind is that Richmond has fewer amenities compared to larger suburbs. There are great local restaurants and businesses, but if you're looking for like major shopping centers or big box stores such as Walmart, you'll find yourself heading toward Canada or Barrhaven. For some people, that's actually part of the charm of living in Richmond Village. But if you're used to having everything within 5 minutes, it's going to take some adjustment. Let's talk about con number three, which would be limited inventory. Earlier, I mentioned that there's something that surprises a lot of buyers once they start seriously looking in Richmond. Homes don't come up for sale very often here, especially the older century-style homes. Richmond is still a relatively small community, and many of the people who move here tend to stay here for a long time. Even with some of the newer developments being built, the overall inventory of homes in Richmond Village is still fairly limited compared to the larger Ottawa suburbs. So when a good property comes on the market, it can attract a lot of attention from buyers specifically looking to live here. And as I mentioned earlier, there's one thing that surprises a lot of buyers after they move to Richmond, and that's just how quiet and village-like it actually feels here, especially in the evenings and during the winter months. A lot of buyers expect to feel similar to other Ottawa suburbs, but Richmond does maintain that small town atmosphere. For many people, that ends up becoming one of their favorite things about living here. But it can take a little adjustment, especially if you're used to busier areas with more activity late at night. If you're thinking about buying, selling, investing, or relocating to Ottawa, and you'd like to have a private conversation, feel free to reach out anytime using the information in the description below. And if you want to see what Richmond Village actually looks like, make sure to check out my Richmond Village neighborhood tour video right here.